25 centuries ago, King Suddhodhan ruled a land near the Himalaya mountains. One day, during a midsummer festival, his wife, Queen Maya, returned to her quarters to rest, and she fell asleep and dreamed a vivid dream, in which 4 angels carried her high into white mountain peaks and clothed her in flowers. A majestic white bull elephant, bearing a white lotus in its trunk, approached Maya and walked around her 3 times. Then the elephant struck her on the right side with its trunk and vanished into her. When Maya woke, she told her husband about the dream. The king summoned 64 Brahmins to come and interpret it. Queen Maya would give birth to a son, the Brahmins said, and if the son did not leave the household, he would become a world conqueror. However, if he were to leave the household, he would become a Buddha. When the time for the birth came near, Queen Maya wished to travel from Kapilvastu, the king's capital, to her childhood home, Devdaha, to give birth. With the king's blessings, she left Kapilvastu on a palanquin carried by 1,000 courtiers. On the way to Devdaha, the procession passed Lumbini Grove, which was full of blossoming trees. Entranced, the queen asked her courtiers to stop, and she left the palanquin and entered the grove. As she reached up to touch the blossoms, her son was born. Then the queen and her son were showered with perfumed blossoms, and 2 streams of sparkling water poured from the sky to bathe them. And the infant stood and took 7 steps and proclaimed, "I alone am the world-honored one." Then Queen Maya and her son returned to Kapilvastu. The queen died 7 days later, and the infant prince was nursed and raised by the queen's sister, Prajapati, also married to King Suddhodhan. The prince was named Siddhartha Gautam, which means one who has accomplished a goal. When Prince Siddhartha was a few days old, 9 Brahmin holy men made a prophecy. It was foretold that the boy would either be a great ruler or a great spiritual teacher. King Suddhodhan preferred the first outcome and prepared his son accordingly. He raised the boy in great luxury and shielded him from the knowledge of religion and human suffering. At the age of 16, he was married to his cousin Yasodhara, who was also 16. Yasodhara was the daughter of Kolya chief, and her mother was a sister to King Suddhodhan. As time passed, the prince reached the age of 29 with little experience of the world outside the walls of his opulent palaces. He was oblivious to the realities of sickness, old age, and death. One day, overcome with curiosity, Prince Siddhartha asked a charioteer to take him on a series of rides through the countryside. On these journeys, he was shocked by the sight of an aged man, then a sick man, and then a corpse. The stark realities of old age, disease, and death seized and sickened the prince. Finally, he saw a wandering sage. The charioteer explained that the sage was one who had renounced the world and sought release from fear of death and sufferings. These life-changing encounters would become known in Buddhism as the 4 passing sights. For a time, the prince returned to the palace life, but he took no pleasure in it. Even the news of his wife Yasodhara had given birth to a son did not please him. The child was called Rahul, which means fetter. One night, the prince wandered the palace alone. The luxuries that had once pleased him now seemed meaningless. Musicians and dancing girls had fallen asleep and were sprawled about, snoring and sputtering. Prince Siddhartha reflected on the old age, disease, and death that would overtake them all and turn their bodies to dust. He realized then that he could no longer be content living the life of a prince. That very night he left the palace, shaved his head, and changed his royal clothes into beggar's robe. Renouncing all luxury he had known, he began his quest for enlightenment.